Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Diablo 4. Today though we're discussing the all-important Uber Uniques since there's some more interesting news around them. We've just hit the point where essentially the end game is farming Duriel. So Uber Uniques are what we're looking for, and we've had two Uber Uniques rebalanced in this season. Huge buff for the Ring of Starless Skies, which was the former worst Uber Unique generally, and the Melted Heart of Selig, which was the best defensive Uber previously. Now it's rebalanced to be much less insane, and so it's taken a major hit. For Starless Skies, it's so much better than it was that it's now one of the best Ubers at this point. Previously, you get this cheaper cost to your core skills, but only if you continually cast core skills and nothing else. And it's only 40% less resource cost for what a sacrifice that actually is. Now, however, it simply reduces the resource cost of your skills as a whole, whatever skill that is, and whatever you're spending resources on will affect this ring. In doing so, it'll also increase your damage to up to 40% times damage for 3 seconds, including that resource reduction, which is fantastic. It's a major resource cost down ring, while also a major DPS increase. You just need to be spending resources to achieve it, and that's very simple. Meanwhile, Selig's is feeling much worse, and yet better at the same time. Previously, its main effect was to increase your resource by 30 at the max, but then when you take damage, you drain 3 resources for every 1% of your life that you would have lost instead. It's a major damage reduction. Now, you gain double the max resource, a 60 max increase, but only 75% rather than 100% of the incoming damage is actually buffered. In exchange, it drains less resources when you take damage. It'll take 2 instead of 3. So better on the resources, better increased max amount, but it's 75% reduced damage compared to 100%, so you can no longer achieve that literal damage immune state that we were seeing in the higher tiers, required even for the Abattoir in Season 2. The cost of an amulet slot, it is a hard sell. On the other hand, we have two interesting points of interest around Uber Uniques as a whole with the patch of 1.3.2. Coming February 13th, they're increasing the odds that Ubers can actually drop outside of Duriel farming, though they haven't told us how much it was or how much they've increased it by. And more importantly, they're finally introducing an Uber Unique crafting system. In short, you'll be able to dismantle Uber Uniques and receive a new currency called Resplendent Sparks. As I make this video, we're the day before the patch, so we don't know how this is truly going to turn out, but at a bare minimum, it means you're going to be able to craft a specific Uber Unique of your choosing once you've got the 5 Resplendent Sparks from dismantling Ubers. The question then that we are all wondering before the launch of it is if 1 Resplendent Spark will be given per dismantle, or if maybe you'll get more. I mean, personally, I've killed so many Duriels over Season 2 and now Season 3, and I've only ever seen 1 Uber Unique drop. Maybe you're a lot luckier than me, but for me, I've only ever got 1, so a crafting system relying on Ubers to dismantle isn't going to help me. If you're some kind of Uber farming god, maybe duplicates aren't going to hurt you so much anymore then. Each one leads eventually to that ideal situation where you can craft your perfect Uber Unique that you need. So here's a question that spawned from having a crafting system. What is the ideal Uber Unique for you? What should you be spending your Resplendent Sparks on? It's definitely important to know, so we're going to discuss exactly that for all 5 classes, and at the end we'll provide a sort of overall ranking for each Uber. Let's go through each class and talk about their most important uniques, kicking things off with Sorcerer. Their most important unique is actually between 2. There's the Harlequin crest, aka shaco, and the new version of the Starless Sky. As Josh has explained to me, it's actually quite tight between the 2. With the new Meteor build and then the classic Blizzard build being their best picks right now, it kind of makes it a mix. Meteor needs a unique helm to work, so you can't use shaco in that slot. On the other hand, Starless Skies can be impactful, but not as competitive as you might imagine. Take Tal Rasha. That is super important. You can't give that up. So you're competing with X-Files with, say, a Blizzard build. Though obviously worth it in this case, it is surprising how it affects the builds a lot less than you'd imagine. After that, it does look like the unique staff. Ahavarion is a good pick below those in priority. The raw affixes it provides, like the massive 35% damage increase, or the huge attack speed, crit strike chance, even the stun can be good. The raw value of those affixes, it's arguable that you can drop 2 aspects to pick that up, especially with the event shrines being so relevant right now during the Lunar Awakening. You get one of those ancestral favored dungeons or vaults, and that means you're gonna have shrines in there. An extra 20 seconds per elite kill then is gonna keep them pretty much permanently active for the whole run, leading to ridiculously fast clears, and that could actually be really relevant in the gauntlet. Then we have a quick last mention of andariels and seligs. Andariel is still great. It's sort of a plus 50% multiplied damage constantly via the poison damage, so that's going to help stack another Tal Rashers. The massive downside is the helmet slot, which basically forces you to drop a defensive aspect. The only one you can really afford is on your helmet, since you've got a unique chest and pair of legs on usually. So if you don't need the defensive aspect, then maybe. While seligs is on the other hand still great as a defensive pick, but is a huge DPS loss to lose your amulet. If the gauntlet actually challenges your survivability, then maybe, but even then it's going to be very unlikely you're going to use seligs. Next, let's talk about my main class though, Necromancers. Just like Sorcerers, the top two are easily Shaco, the Helm, or the new Starless Sky's Ring. Both provide a huge amount of value in most builds. Only two builds that really matter right now are, say, Bone Spear and Blood Surge. Either way, Shaco is going to be extremely effective for both of these, increasing the ranks of the main core skill and giving that free DR on the Helm slot. Starless Skies will be incredible for both too. Infinite resources and a huge damage increase that Necromancers are missing out on because they're unable to run to Bolt's Will in a smooth way, with the lacking unstoppable options. Both are pretty much no-brainers to equip, except for the other builds that rely on essence way less, like say Infinite Mist, though that's fallen out of favour in Season 3, even if it's still good. Behind those top two though, we have the Grandfather specifically for Bone Spear, in which you'll have to give up the potential of an offensive aspect, a possible offhand aspect, which could be the unique shield, lidless, so it's actually a debatable uber in general. If you want max DPS though, the Grandfather on a Bone Spear build is the play, and that's what the current endgame is, farming Duriel and malphas, so you would use it right now. With the Gauntlet though, it might be different. Maybe the Grandfather will be lower on the priority because you won't need more damage, you'll need speed and momentum to get through the Gauntlet faster. Below those, I value things like the Doombringer for say its DR effect, and then there's andariels for the healing and extra DPS. Both are fine, but nowhere near as important with the current state of things. Next, we have Barbarians, who want as much raw power as they can get. Overall though, it's still Shaco at the top of the list, especially when you consider that many Barb builds, with the Gauntlet in mind, are going to be running two cores, Whirlwind and Hammer of Ancients, on top of Charge itself. This will increase the levels of all three of these major DPS skills, let alone the DR it's just going to give on top of the good affixes. Still, it's closely followed by equipping the Grandfather, massive crit damage increase, a pure damage pick that will upgrade from what was probably already a pure damage slot. Between the two then, Shaco's just provides more value, even though the Grandfather is going to be amazing. Under that, we have the situational Starless Skies, which Cotton explained to me might actually not be as good as it appears. It's obviously incredible if you're not running the Banished Lords and Ring of Red Fur setup, since they scale from your resources spent. If you're lowering how much resources you can spend, then you lower their relevance and anti-synergy in concept. Unfortunately, most bar builds are going to be using that setup then, so the Starless Skies might not be as ideal. Finally, we have Doombringer, which is great if you can give up an offensive aspect slot, Seligs, which is still brilliant as a defensive pick, but you know, giving up an amulet slot is going to be very hard to sell, and andariels does not hit how it needs to. You don't really need the healing, it's not that all impactful on the DPS. A lot of the former uber value is in defensive picks that can help you survive the abattoir. With the current game and state, and with the Gauntlet not seeming to provide that kind of threat, things have changed a lot. Reflected again when we talk about the rogues, which again love Harlequin's crest. The damage potential in DR, it's insane. They're also going to absolutely love the Ring of Starless Skies. They're going to be pretty competitive in which one you'd want more. Starless Skies is going to help manage the energy you're spending constantly while providing a huge DPS increase at the same time. Both will work in any of their meta builds right now very well, while Doombringer, previously super important, isn't as vital as it was. Fantastic as a defensive source, but otherwise not too important, but we don't need to be DR stacking. Andariels could be good for them, you know, with a poison sort of focus, but between that and Shacos, you'd obviously take Shacos. Okay, lastly, we have the Druids, who have a really weird situation with Ubers. Starless Skies is incredible for them and is probably their best uber unique. It helps them manage their spirit while providing the major DPS increase. Yeah, it's just very good immediately. Why not Shacos? Well, because Druids face that awkward situation with their helmet slot. You need Tempest Raw in many of their best builds to actually get the build to even work, not specifically enhance it, but get it to work. This reflects the very poor item design for Diablo 4 and specifically for Druids. Keeps them stuck having a slow, less fun experience while leveling until they get vital uniques that get the build even functional. They should not be depending on items to get the class to work, and in the case of Tempest Raw, if you're needing that for your build, then you can't use Shacos. So it's pretty much Starless Skies as their main, most important uber. But yeah, I think going through all of that, it is clear the state the Ubers are in right now. Shacos is insanely valuable. Starless Skies is a top tier Uber now. The value of things like Doombringer and Seligs way down compared to before, while we don't need to defensive stack. So as a universal ranking then, keep in mind this does not work for every class, I think it looks like this overall. At the bottom, number 7, you've got Melted Heart of Selig. You don't need the defensive. You're giving up an amulet slot. It's too expensive. Above that, at 6, I'd put probably andariels, because across the board, it's just not hitting how it should, though some value the poison damage a lot more. At 5 and 4, I would kind of give them a joint place. I put Doombringer and ahavarion. So hard to use the staff. The affixes on it are so good, but then you're giving up 1 or 2 very important offensive slots in the weapon, while Doombringer provides a damage reduction, but again, not that valuable right now. Above that in value then, you've got 3rd place for the Grandfather, a major DPS increase for say Barbarians and the Necromancers, but in exchange for a vital slot that hits Necromancers pretty hard as well. If we don't need the raw DPS that it's providing in the gauntlet, you might not even use it in favor of other effects. Second place then, we have the Ring of Starless Skies. This is second despite the incredible effect that it has for many different builds and classes, because some builds and classes don't want to use it because it kind of backfires on them. Or it's just not as impactful as it might be because it's a ring slot, and that's one of the most important slots that everyone has. Giving that up is quite difficult. However, it's incredibly valuable and so impactful to the builds that can put it on. Universally though, at number 1, once again, it's the harlequin crest, shacos. That helmet just does so much for goddamn near everyone, except for say druids who can't give up the helmet slot in most builds. It would seem then, if you've got the duplicates to actually craft yourself an uber unique, you're going to be wanting to craft shacos, and under that, the starless skies. But as I've said, it depends on the class, the build, what you're doing. But hopefully this overview helps you prepare for your pile of ubers and how to value them properly for dismantling, which is totally real, and we're definitely going to be doing that. But I do know some people who have found multiple, even in one night, so these people will exist, if they're not me, I guess. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.